The U.S.-Mexico border up until the mid to late 80s was open as a result of some things that were going on in Mexico.
Hello and welcome to our video on prevention through deterrence, exposing the truth behind border security. Now, throughout this featured film, we'll be discussing what is prevention through deterrence. We'll also interview a couple of students around UNC and see what they think about the US-Mexico border and a couple other topics in this video. So the first question we asked them seemed to be a simple one. What do you know about the US-Mexico border? Well, here are some of the responses we got.
No. Trump is trying to build a wall for it.
The U.S.-Mexico border is probably one of the places that, other than China, that we take in the most imports.
I know that it has a lot of controversy surrounding it, especially due to the current president, who really wants to build a wall.
A lot of conservative-minded people want to have a wall put up to deter drug trafficking and the like.
It was understood that about 80 to 90% of all illegal immigration came through the San Diego-Tijuana corridor.
Deterrence, also known as PTD, is a policy created by the U.S. government that increases security and border patrol in urban migrating cities along the U.S.-Mexico border. Since PTD's main goal is to deter people away from crossing through main entry cities, migrants resort to crossing through the desert. Consequently, migrants traversing through the desert leads to necroviolence and the necessity of humanitarian aid.
So, with that said, we asked our participants, what is PTD? And well, we got a variety of responses. So let's take a look.
Do you know what prevention through deterrence is?
No.
I do not.
Guess in terms of immigration, you're going to punish a certain immigrant so that others will learn not to do the same thing.
I think that's kind of a really archaic form of deterring someone from doing something.
So that's tough.
Basically lead a bunch of illegal immigrants, even though they are illegal, to their deaths is inhumane in every way.
Documenting deaths in the desert is difficult because of the size of the desert.
Necroviolence is the operationalization of necropower, in which the government exerts its power by treating corpses inhumanely and using them as a weapon to deter people from crossing into the desert. Jason De Leon says that in the desert, a corpse can be erased with no trace of existence. Not only does this affect the corpses, but it affects the lives of the migrants' family members and loved ones who will never gain closure for their deaths. A recent analysis from the National Network for Immigrant and Refugee Rights says that the U.S. Border Patrol recorded 6,915 deaths between the years of 1998 and 2016. This number does not account for all the bodies recovered at the border, and the actual number should be much larger.
So who's responsible for the deaths at the border? Well, let's take a look.
I think it's mostly on the U.S. government to blame for the deaths.
I would think themselves. I think they put themselves in risks that they know are very risky.
I think it is the fault of the American and Mexican government, which is a big distinction from the American and Mexican people. I think the fault definitely lies with the Mexican government for the amount of corruption that's in it currently, and I think it also lies with the United States for how they treat the people at the border.
Did you know that crossing the desert is very dangerous? Many immigrants die of dehydration, heat, hunger, and fatigue, and it has become even more dangerous since the implementation of prevention through deterrence. Consequently, humanitarian aids have risen to provide help for these immigrants traveling through these dangerous trails, but they are being punished for providing help. According to a New York Times article, Scott Warren was arrested for having provided food, water, and shelter to 2 undocumented people. He was charged with 2 federal counts of harboring and 1 count of conspiracy to harbor. Humanitarians give water to people who are dehydrated and food to people who are starving, regardless of their background or paperwork. Volunteers from organizations such as No More Deaths, No Más Muertes hike year-round along trails in the Arizona section of the Sonoran Desert, leaving water, food, blankets, and other basic necessities. We can stand by humanitarian aids by being supportive. We as Americans can call the United States Attorney's Office in Tucson and make clear that humanitarian aid is not a crime.
To address the humanitarian aid part of our project, we asked our interviewees, we let them know about humanitarian aid and how some American citizens have been arrested for simply leaving water out on the trails where they know that the migrants will be traveling. And so we asked them about that, their opinion on that, as well as do you think Americans should help out the immigrants crossing the border?
Yeah, I saw that on the news the other day. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like, yeah, they leave water for the immigrants. But I don't think that they should be arrested. I'm not sure necessarily that it should be something that they should do themselves, because so the coyotes are they're not good people, and I wouldn't necessarily want to be a citizen interacting with those people, even if like on the off chance that they were there. I think like the effort is something that's like, you know, it's a valiant effort, and if there were another way to do it, then I would be 100% for it. But I think it's unsafe to, as like if I were to go and leave water and, you know, happen to run into them, I think personally it'd be unsafe, just because of like the implication of what, you know, an American in the desert would mean for.
In a way, I don't agree with that, because they could be aiding people who would like corrupt our society in the future. But then by the same token, if these are people who are going to benefit us, such as like the dreamers, I could see where yes, that would benefit the people of Americans helping them, but at the same time, if it goes against the law, then they're ultimately committing a crime as well. So
the final question we asked our participants was, how do you envision the border crisis being resolved? Here are some of the responses.
Accept more immigrants, make it easier to get a citizenship. I think the obstacles that they have in place now is just kind of unfair. I don't know why it takes 20 years to get an immigrant visa. It took my dad something like 25 years, and he was in the United States for a majority of the time.
But I think the process right now is also too difficult, that it's deterring people from entering legally, and because they're also taking the jobs that we don't want, doing them for a lot less cost, for a lot lower wages, and doing them 10 times better than we ever would.
I think it's going to take a lot of work in Congress and with the president, but I definitely don't think it's going to be solved by building a wall.
Like, moral standing should not determine your political beliefs. And I don't think it has to do with being Democrat or Republican with Obama or Trump or Bush or whoever was president in the past. Like, it should never be a question like risking someone else's life just so they don't come into your country.
We hope you enjoyed our video, Prevention Through Deterrence, exposing the truth behind border security. Thanks for watching.